Well, firstly, I would just like to thank the organizers of the festival. I am very, very grateful to them that they allow me to come here and to present the results of all our research. So the talk I am giving this morning is about an anthropological project to study the use and also the consequence of social media all around the world. In order to do this, the anthropologists agreed that they would each carry out 15 months, they would live 15 months in places all over the world. So you can see here the places where we work. We have a small town in northern Chile where the men work in the copper mines. We have a settlement in Brazil, mainly waiters and builders and workers. We have a village north of London. We have a small town in Puglia in the south of Italy. We have Mardin, a town right on the border between Syria and Turkey. A town with an IT complex in southern India. And finally, two sites in China. One is a small rural town, and the other is a place where it's a factory town. 250 million Chinese move into the factory system, so the anthropologist lives inside one of these factories. Now, why should anthropologists be interested in social media? The problem is this. Every day you hear people making claims about social media. In the newspapers, just in general discussion. You might be told, oh, nobody really understands today what is a proper friend because of social media. Or maybe our attention span, our cognitive capacity. This has changed because of the way we are tweeting and they are so short. But when people make these claims, who are they talking about? Are they talking about farmers in India because they use social media? Are they talking about the builders in Brazil because they use social media? The problem is that mostly these claims are based on disciplines such as psychology. Somebody does an experiment with some college students in the US, and they say, oh, now we can make a general claim about social media. But really, if you want to understand social media, you have to be engaged with the diversity of people all around our contemporary world. But then, why does it take 15 months living with those people to study social media? One of the reasons is that social media is very private conversation, often just between families or close friends. And too much of what we hear about social media is only using the publicly available, like Twitter data. But you don't understand social media until you also see the messages that people send every day on something like WhatsApp or on Snapchat. And people do not share that kind of information very easily with strangers. Sometimes you need to know a person for a whole year before they will trust you that you are just using this information for educational research, and you will never reveal their names to another person or exactly where it comes from. It takes a long time to build trust. But the other point is when we start our work, we have no idea why people post on social media. Perhaps it is to do with their religion. Maybe it is their education. Maybe it's the kind of work they do. Maybe the nature of their family in that region, or what is happening in politics, or some other reason. And you will never understand the answer to this if you are only online. You have to also be part of their lives offline. So the logic of the anthropological technique, what we call ethnography, is that you have to be with people through all of these things, to know about their work, their religion, their family, and everything, before you can know which is the important thing for understanding social media. It's not like we are trying to be difficult. This is just the truth of everybody's life. They live all of these things simultaneously. So we have to know about all of them. But the other thing is that the reasons that they post on social media may be different. Different for young people or older people, for women or for men, for well-educated or not so well-educated. For these reasons, we have to be there 15 months before we can speak with any authority on this topic of the use and the consequence of social media. We call this method holistic contextualization. So, when you have 9 sites from all around the world, it is easy to do this kind of survey. How many people share their passwords? Who set up your account? Do you know more people on social media? The average number of friends. It's easy. But to be honest, we make very little use of this kind of data. We find that actually people in different places, they answer the questions differently. We don't really trust this kind of data. But at least this makes one point. Already you can see that it is different. Whatever question, it is different in each place. Social media will differ from place to place to place. So the way we work as a team, very collaborative, very comparative. And this is very helpful. So for example, you could look at these images and you might think they are very similar to each other. But actually we would know that in one case they are taking the photograph because they have achieved all these things. They can afford to buy an iPhone. And in the other case, they have borrowed all these things just to take the photo. I remember after a couple of months, the person from Brazil, he made a report to the team. He says, well, I live with very low-income people. And of course, they do not post about where they really live, the half-built brick walls, the poverty. They will post instead against a swimming pool, or they are in the gym to show that their aspirations. He says to me, this is completely obvious. But The problem is we have also an anthropologist working in Chile. And she said exactly the opposite. She says, what are you talking about? I also work in a low-income settlement. But here, the people know that the metropolitan people, they look down upon us. So they try and form, in response, a community based on honesty. They would never post an image against a swimming pool because everyone knows that is not true of them. All the people they post to, they know they could never afford to go to a gym or a swimming pool. So instead they post very modest, very unpretentious images. And for her too, this is obvious. So when these two people talk to each other, they realize actually nothing is obvious. Each person has to explain why the behavior is different in each site. So let me give an example also from England, which is where I worked. In England, everybody agrees that the main problem of social media is the loss of privacy. For them, again, it is obvious that that is the threat of social media from privacy. But this story is about the workers in the Chinese factory. And her situation is completely different. The people who lived in rural China, they lived in extended families. They never had a private room just for themselves, their own bedroom. And nobody will knock on a door before they come into your room. At the factory, she lives in this dormitory. For her, it is only with social media that she finds out there is this thing called privacy. It's the first time she can experience privacy. For her, social media is not the death of privacy, it is the birth of privacy. Another common example you will find, for example, in sociology. People think that social media is making everybody more individualistic. But actually, in general, our evidence goes against this. We find that in most of the places where we work, modern life is already having problems that it is becoming too fragmented. And if anything, people use the social media to try and repair, to bring back the traditional group which previously was connected. So when families are divided, they will use social media to come back as a family. In the Kurdish community in Turkey, which with a lot of difficult politics organized by tribes, a person may have 200 friends on Facebook, but apart from 20, they are all relatives. And equally, caste in India may be strengthened by social media. And this is not the only way that social media can be quite conservative. Women in our Turkish site, they wouldn't show themselves out having tea with somebody because of the gossip. On Facebook, they prefer to show just images of food because nobody can gossip about this. So actually, what you see online on Facebook is more conservative than what you would think if you were to meet these young women offline. But before social media, it was impossible in this strict Muslim society for young men and young women to be much in contact without their parents knowing about it. But as this image shows, you can have a secret boyfriend online. They might send 500 messages a day on WhatsApp to the secret boyfriend, but not on Facebook. It has to be WhatsApp. There were also many claims made about politics on social media. We find in general there is less politics on social media than we expected. This is not a surprise in a place that is on the border between Syria and Turkey. There are very serious problems of political repression. But we also found this, for example, in our site in South India, where there is no similar problem in terms of politics. And actually the main reason was nothing to do with politics. It was rather that people say it's social media. And politics can be quite divisive. So when you are having conversation with your friends, with your family, you might avoid a topic that causes causes problems, maybe with the family. And that's the reason there is less politics. Okay, so for all of these reasons, the main book that we publish is not called How Did Social Media Change the World? It is called How Did the World Change Social Media? So as a final example of this, I will give you a case from, I think, the most exotic, the most strange people in all of our 9 field sites. We call these people the English. When social media first became used by adults in England, they thought it was a great way to bring back community. Everybody thinks they have lost the traditional community. So they go on Friends Reunited, and they make contact with people they lost contact with, who live in the north of England, or the people they were maybe at school with. But then, after a few months, they realize why they lost contact with the people who live in the north, the cousins, or the people they were at school with. Because there were many people, let's say, you went on holiday with, and maybe you do not want to be so close anymore. So then they find a new purpose for social media. It's to keep people at exactly the right distance. Not too close and not too far. You want to be in touch with your relatives, but you don't want to have a long telephone conversation or invite them into your home. And it's okay. You don't need to do this. They are on Facebook. So English people, they keep social media a bit like the English weather. It's not hot, it's not cold, it's sort of grey. Other people do this, but not as much as the English. So, I talk about the differences between these places, but there are also some generalizations you can make about social media. For example, it represents a change in human communication. Up to now, we tend either to use oral communication, like speaking on the phone, or textual communication, like in typing and writing. But with social media, the visual becomes much more important as an integral part of communication. You think of the term Snapchat. Snap, it is photograph, chatting with photographs, Snapchat. So we already had the emoticons, the emojis. But now, on Snapchat, you can use your own face and you show your changing mood all day long to tell your friends how you are feeling. Now, unfortunately, I find that much of the discussion of this topic of social media is dominated by one iconic image, the selfie. People seem to think, maybe because in English the word selfie is like the word selfish, that this is some kind of narcissistic, individualistic thing that young people do. But in fact, even in my field site, I find many different kinds of selfie. Yes, you will find the glamorous selfie that people might post of themselves on Instagram. But for the school children on Facebook, 5 times as many selfies are showing people as a group, with their friends, not just as an individual. It's because selfies are used to demonstrate what the school children call in English, my bestie, my best friend forever. So when the phone is pointed at them, they put their arms around their friends rather than trying to look individually glamorous. In fact, the most common kind of selfie is when you try to look as ugly as possible. It's very easy to do this. You take your phone, you put it under your chin, and you photograph right up your nose. And mainly these are circulated on Snapchat for fun. So the selfie also varies across culturally. For example, people in Italy, they would say they are stylish. People in Trinidad also, they will say, we are stylish. But we found that in our study in Puglia, that when people in Italy want to be stylish on social media, it's partly because they know that Italians have a reputation for being stylish. It's like they have a responsibility to do this. So they might ask the hairdresser for advice about their hair, or a stylist about advice about their clothing. But in Trinidad, the concept of stylish is always about being as different as possible from every other person. So you do not want a hairstyle that is advised by your hairdresser, or the clothing that your friends tell you to wear. You want to be different from that. Now, once you start taking the selfie seriously, you can also find serious selfies. For example, one part of the work that I did, I was doing on behalf of a hospice. This is an institution that works with people. Usually they have a terminal diagnosis, most commonly from cancer. And in this image, you can see Matt, who was one of my informants. And a relatively young man. He spoke quite a lot to me about his use of social media before his death from cancer. And one of the things that he explained to me was that Facebook was very useful to him for telling many people about the prognosis of his condition without having to constantly repeat himself. But at the same time, he said that posting, it helped him to acknowledge to himself what is happening. So I found it very interesting that at the time, the cover picture on his Facebook was what we call a mirror selfie. To me, it was quite profound, quite moving, because this is a very precise technology. If you want to show the simultaneity at exactly the same time, you are both getting other people to acknowledge, and you are acknowledging to yourself, in this instance, how he was recovering from chemotherapy. So, another new kind of visual communication that has developed, especially through the use of social media, is called the meme. And by the end of our research, we have an explanation of all of these memes. We call them the moral police of the internet. Basically, there are serious memes and there are funny memes. So this is a serious meme. For religious Hindus, it's important to start the day in a state of ritual purity. And one way you can do this is you can send a blessing to all your friends very early in the morning. But maybe more common, more familiar to you are the different kinds of funny memes. So like this is one from England, and this would be a typical one from Trinidad. But the point about these is that whether they are serious or whether they are funny, most memes are commenting upon values. And what we found was many people, they are not very literate. They are not very confident about giving their opinions, talking at length. But they found that just by sharing all these memes, they could help create a consensus around the values that they would like to support. And this is very important for an anthropologist, because we are trying to understand how is it in a very short time everybody seems to understand what is the right way and what is the wrong way to behave on social media. Again, these norms become clearer when you see hundreds, thousands of images, and you can start to see what is typical. For example, you can see that Trinidadians, they are very careful how they will dress before they will post on social media. And the English people are not. Similarly, I am now going to tell you the most shocking thing you have ever heard about women in England. Women post constantly about wine, but they never say there is any difference in the kind of wine, Primitivo or Chianti. They just have one thing called wine, and it's all the same. And the men do the same with the beer. Similarly, men will post many things about food, but always food that is fattening. While women, when they talk about food, it is always about dieting. So you can see the way that the anthropologist documents the different forms of cultural value. For example, people in England, they often use comments that use a particular kind of humor, which we would call self-deprecating. No. I am really stupid, I put the plug in the wrong way round. I wear two different boots together. But in Trinidad, you will never find this kind of posting. Trinidadian posting, there is a lot of nationalistic posting, bling, carnival, things you will never see in English posting. I give one more example. This is, again, Trinidad posting. Again, this is extended family in Trinidad. You do not find in English posting. Okay. One more example. What happens when somebody becomes a mother? What happens on social media when you become a mother? In England, when you become a mother, this is the sequence of profile pictures. For a short time, you are there as the mother. But very quickly, you replace yourself with the image of your baby. So this is not the Facebook of the baby, it is the Facebook profile picture of the mother. In Trinidad, it is exactly the opposite. A young mother, she wants to show, I can still be very glamorous. And no one should think that just because I am a mother, that is the only thing that I am. Okay, So now I want to talk about some of the higher generalizations you can make from this research. The first is a term we call Polimedia. And the point we make with this word is not just that you have more choices of media. It actually changes the relationship to media itself, making it more social and more moral. The reason is, before, mostly the reason a person picked one media, not another media, is either cost or it is access. But now, if you have a computer plan or phone plan, there is no question, cost or access. So that means you have to explain why did you use this media and not that media. My girlfriend dumped me, but she did it on WhatsApp. Couldn't she at least have made a phone call? Okay. The second general point is that if you are studying social media, we need a definition. What is social media? So we call it this thing scalable sociality. What does it mean? It means around 40 years ago, there were two main kinds of media. Either you have private media, two people, telephone call, something like that, or you have public media, television, radio, whoever is there can be in the audience. Then you get things like email and web, which start to develop like groups between these two. And with social media, you are filling in the gaps. So let me show you. The school children in England where I work, from age of 11, they are mainly using five different kinds of social media. But you can make these into a sequence. At the bottom is Snapchat, usually just a few trusted friends I can send the ugly picture to. It's okay. Then WhatsApp. So in the class, usually 3 WhatsApps. The one where the girls talk about the boys, the one where the boys talk about the girls, and the one where they talk together. Then Twitter is used by the whole class. The school teacher could send something on Twitter. Then Facebook now is used for family, for people who live in the same area. Maybe if you are starting to work with work colleagues. And then at the top comes Instagram, because that is the only social media you are comfortable if there are strangers there. Because you spend a week creating a really stylish image and you put it on Instagram. And somebody from Sweden likes it. And you feel, wow, somebody from Sweden liked my image on Instagram. It's good. Okay. The next general point really is a challenge to the way most people study and think about social media. Because mostly they work in, say, internet studies, computer studies, and the focus is on the technology and the platforms. and also on the commercial interest of the corporations, like the Facebook corporation. So they think that the platform is the technology that causes the thing that we post, the content. But that is not what we found. We found that social media is content. It is genres of communication. And these communication will shift from one platform to another. So again, these school children have a lot of banter, sometimes quite nasty communication between themselves. And this will start in the playground. Then it moved, the first social media, it moved to something called BBM, which was BlackBerry phones, because they were cheap for young people. Then in some countries it might move to Facebook, in another country to Twitter. But the point is, if the same genre of communication can be on all these platforms, the cause cannot be the platforms or the companies. So, at the end of this, at the highest level of generality, we produce something we call a theory of attainment. And this is to deal with a problem. The problem is when you get these new technologies like social media, you always get one group of people who will say, oh, we have lost our humanity. It used to be we were proper people, face to face. Now everybody is looking at their phones all the time. We have lost our true humanity. And on the other side, there are people who get very excited. There is this fantastic new technology. We are no longer just ordinary human. Now we are post-human. We are transhuman. And the problem is that every time there's a new technology, you get these things said. So I think maybe the problem is the meaning of the word humanity. Actually, it is a very conservative term. We tend to use it to mean only the things that human beings have been up to now. But we say, in the theory of attainment, humanity should come to mean all the things that we are also going to be in the future. The new technologies we will attain. Before, you would have defined human beings as things that could not fly. Now with aeroplanes, we accept human beings are things that can fly. But we are still just human beings. Not post, not trans. Okay, finally, I just want to suggest that if it is true that we understand social media well from this research, we should be able to make a good use of social media ourselves. And just as we have a holistic methodology for studying people, we also create a holistic idea of how you communicate research to people using the new digital technologies. So we develop a whole range of outputs, starting with the most popular. We found, for example, that today a lot of the way people learn is through YouTube videos under 5 minutes. So we make over 100 YouTube videos under 5 minutes. If you go to our website, which is called Why We Post, you can find all the films and all the conclusions. And the good news is everything is in Italian. Already in Italian. We also have a free university course we put on 3 times a year, that if people want a deeper idea, they can take the university course on a platform which is like social media. People can talk a lot on it. Then we have the books. If you want to read 2,000 pages, you can look at the books, 11 books. And soon, next summer, the main books will also be in Italian. The general book, and also the book about Puglia, about Italy, and the book about Turkey will all be in Italian. And everything is open access, everything is free. Already our books have more than 250,000 downloads, and a lot of it is countries like Philippines, Ethiopia, where for anthropologists we are very happy that these people are not just the people we are studying, but they also get the opportunity to learn about our research. So I hope I have given you an idea of what we have done. I am very happy to answer questions. This project is now complete. In October we start a new project, also for 5 years, looking more at the impact of smartphones, and particularly the development of mobile phone health applications. And again, one of the field sites will be in Italy.